We would be honoured if you would join us.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Film Stories End of the Year podcast. I'm joined on the call today by our editor, Simon Brew. Hello, Simon. Editor of filmstories.co.uk, Ryan Lambie.
Hello.
Our reviews editor, Maria Lattila, who is still refusing to tell me how to properly pronounce her name. And our contributor, James Harvey. Hello, James.
Hello.
We're all going to talk about basically our favourite films of the year. You can read our pick of 31 great films on filmstories.co.uk, but we're going to take our favourites out of there, or just whatever we want to talk about, really. You know how we ramble these things. So we're going to kick off with Maria and her choice for film of the year.
Can I do two?
Oh, God, yes, if you have to. Breaking the rules already, God, we're 30 seconds in.
That's what people expect from us, don't they? For me, the best film of the year is The Substance. As you four know, I do like a horror film, and I absolutely love how much of a horror film The Substance is. It's not just this kind of highbrow look at, women and beauty ideals and whatever, but it's the last act is just wonderfully bonkers. And yeah, somebody came up to me in the office a couple of weeks ago and said they loved the film apart from the ending, the third act. And I said, no, that's exactly what makes the film. But I also want to highlight Sing Sing, which I don't think enough people have been talking about. Sing Sing is incredible. I reviewed it in August and I gave it 4 stars, and I've regretted it ever since. It should have been 5 stars. Colman Domingo, Clarence Macklin, absolutely perfect film.
Well, it's always my opinion that films become 5-star films over time, so maybe you can amend your review now. I don't believe 5-star films exist the first time you walk out of the cinema, but that's just me.
No.
So shall we start with The Substance then and move on to Sing Sing, everybody? Because that last act of The Substance is possibly the maddest thing I've seen this year. Well, certainly the last 10 minutes.
Well,
Yeah.
You didn't see Megalopolis, John.
I have seen Megalopolis.
Oh, you have? Oh,
I have
I'll
seen
take it back then.
Megalopolis now.
Wonder if that's anyone's favourite film.
I have thoughts on Megalopolis. This is not the time or the place, but
What,
I
you
don't
mean the
think
Films
it's
of
not-
the Year podcast isn't the time and place for Megalopolis?
It's yeah. Well, should we stay on the subject of Substance and specifically the absolutely gonzo brilliance of the last 10 minutes, which is could have broken the film, allegedly nearly did, but also kind of makes it. Ryan, thoughts? You have thoughts on this, don't you?
Yeah, I thought it. Yeah, I had mixed feelings about the ending actually. It was a bit too kind of boot-tray for me, I think. But no, I think as a whole, it's a great film. And what I think what's interesting about The Substance is it sort of sums up a lot of cinema in 2024. That cinema's getting really weird, and people aren't really. And it's happened so gradually. It feels like people haven't really noticed. Like even something like Gladiator 2, which is theoretically a sword and sandal epic, is weird and twisted and mad and has elements of Caligula and strange shaved baboons. And something like Smile 2 is interesting. So Smile 2 has a lot of parallels with The Substance. In a weird sort of way, they're both about the sort of isolating nature of fame and technology. Both sort of have elements of Videodrome in them. And both have really, really strange imagery in them. So yeah, it's interesting that films like The Substance, that is actually sort of, there's a compensation for sort of awards and things like that. This is the sort of film that I don't know, 30 years ago or so would have been very much not respectable. You know, like I think the last time I talked about substance, I talked about a film called Society.
Yeah.
You know, that's like a cult film. It made no money at the cinemas, particularly. Probably, you know, showed in some sort of grindhouse cinemas and things like that. But yeah, it's interesting that you can now have a film like this star somebody like Demi Moore or Margaret Qualley, and I mean, it made money as well. It did well. I mean, Universal must really be kicking themselves for palming it off on Mubi, because I think they've made about $70 million, I think, it did at the box office. And it's obviously going to do really well on streaming. People are going to buy it on disc. And all because they balked at this fire hose of blood ending. Yeah. I think the problem with the substance ending for me was that it reminded me too much of Reeves and Mortimer. there's a bit in Reeves, no stars in their eyes, and I think Bob comes out as George Michael, and it's just a photograph of George Michael stuck to his face. He's just sort of doing this dunk dance. And so, as soon as I saw that in The Substance, where she comes out with a photograph of the Demi Moore photograph stuck to her face, I just thought, oh, it's Reeves and Mortimer.
I see no reason why that should make it any less worthy.
It's not less worthy. It's just a bit distracting.
It's a compliment.
It's just yeah. Unfortunately,
in the world of streaming, I think like that kind of Lynchian Usner weirdness, body horror, Cronenberg, it's all sort of available to people. You don't have to go and seek this stuff out.
And it's so pervasive as well. It's snuck in, you know, like it's interesting how it's kind of become part of the filmmaking lexicon, I suppose. Like again, Smile 2. I only saw it last night, which is why I'm babbling on about it. But Smile 2, the carpet in Smile 2 that she has in her dressing room, the central character, it's very similar to the carpet in Fire Walk with Me, you know, the Twin Peaks film. That can't be a coincidence. You know, because there's so many sort of Lynchian things in that. I feel like what's his name? Parker, director of Parker Finn. I feel like if he was working in a different genre than horror, people would be talking about him a lot more as a director. His direction on Smile 2 especially is stunning. I mean, it's too long, it doesn't all hang together, but individual set pieces in that film, sequences in that film are just some of the most blackly funny and, like I said, weird shit I've seen all year. But anyway, we've digressed, haven't we?
Genre films are doing ridiculously well. Like horror has for quite a while now been one of the most sort of reliably successful genres that will, you know, you can make them cheaply, but they also make a lot of money at the box office, kind of guaranteed. So I do think that's kind of helped bringing these genre films into kind of these conversations. I mean, we're waiting to see how Nosferatu and The Substance will do in those. You know that Nosferatu was kind of left out of Golden Globes, but yeah, this could really be the year where these films like this will make it to the big awards, and hopefully that will happen more and more.
But not just horror either. Like I said, unhinged horror, really strange ass horror. Like you wouldn't get any of this stuff in a Blumhouse movie. Like Blumhouse movies, they've become quite formulaic. I mean, this is the year we had the flipping haunted swimming pool movie from Blumhouse. I mean, God knows what they must think of stuff like, I saw the TV Glow, which is probably one of my favourite films of the year, or, you know, The Substance, or any of these films, you know, that actually do seem to be wanting to sort of change how you tell horror stories, if you like. Sorry.
So anybody else? Simon, would you like to weigh in on The Substance or Sing Sing at all? Simon.
He's busy.
Is he frozen? Oh, no, he's not frozen.
No.
He's reading Film Stories issue 53 on sale now.
He's doing a comedy bit.
It's been a long comedy bit. A 10-minute comedy bit. As soon as we start talking about beavers, he'll come back.
Bit now.
There we go.
Beavers.
There we go.
Okay.
Good God. 10 minutes in, it's already unhinged.
James, does anybody else want to weigh in on Sing Sing while we're on that subject before we move on? Not a film I've seen, but
on
on
Sing Sing.
I'm very quiet.
I saw Sing Sing on Tuesday. We're recording this on a Friday, and so I saw it this week. And yeah, I agree with Maria. I think it's absolutely lovely. It's sort of half. It's like a more hopeful version of the Shawshank Redemption, but it's made with the cast is there's Coleman Domingo in the lead, and then much of the cast is real prisoners and graduates of this in-prison theatre program that the film is all about. And obviously the film is about them getting ready their new big show and sort of come to terms with life in the prison and the possibility of getting out of prison. And while they're there, working together to make some art in a really unpleasant, a high security prison environment that you'd think would be anathema. I've never pronounced that word before. I've only seen it written down. Anyway, yeah, in an environment where you think no art and no vulnerability is going to be able to thrive, this sort of all-male, really tough theatre group comes together and puts on a completely mad show, and it's so beautiful. It's so lovely. I went to a Q&A with Coleman Domingo and the director afterwards, and I think Coleman Domingo might be just the most charismatic man on the planet. Every answer to every question got a round of applause. It's like everything that comes out of his mouth is a poem. It's bizarre. But yeah, I thought it was a great example of what cinema can do that I think other things struggle to do sometimes. But yeah, it's lovely.
Oh,
there's an interview with the director on the site. I don't want to toot my own horn too much, but it's probably my favourite interview I've done for quite some time. A really in-depth chat about how the film came together. And everyone on this film got paid the same. You know, you've got Coleman Domingo, who's obviously a very well-known actor, got paid exactly the same as a lot of the supporting cast, who are people previously incarcerated. And it's just kind of, it's not just that the film itself is lovely, just everything behind it as well is just so heartfelt. And definitely seek it out when you can.
Excellent. That's a great recommendation. So where did Sing Sing place on our 31 of the list? 31 of films of the year? Was it a top tenner?
I think it was 10 from memory, wasn't it?
10, yeah. 10.
I think it just stuck in there.
And The Substance was in at... Ryan?
7.
Good
job, got it open, isn't it? Bloody hell.
I'm testing you. I thought you'd have this on the...
I can't even remember what I had for breakfast.
Ingrained into your mind.
No, I don't have a mind.
Ryan, do you want to add your choice to the pot now?
No. It's hard. I keep flip-flopping a little bit. I think of the big blockbustery films, Dune Part 2 is my favourite film of the year. It stuns me that it's one of the best performing films of the year at the box office, given, again, how strange it is, how art house, in a way, it is in its design, and that it's basically about the rise of an antichrist space fascist. Amazes me. Yeah, as a big multiplex film, that was stunning. But I think my sort of favourite film, the film that won my heart, is I Saw the TV Glow, which I know James is a big fan of as well. It's just a beautiful, really small, understated, but very visually creative on a low budget indie drama, fantastical horror. It sort of straddles genres, about two teenagers who kind of bond over their love of a sort of Buffy-like 90s TV show, and their obsession over the details of it, and it's very metaphorical. The director said, that it's a kind of analogy for the sort of trans experience, but more sort of generally, I'd say it just sort of captures that sort of feeling of being an awkward teenager and bonding over fandoms, and there's so much sort of richness to it, even though it's told so simply, and there aren't many characters in it. It's not an overly complicated film, which is interesting in a year full of very complicated films. Like I said, it just kind of just grabbed me in a way that no other film this year has quite. That's probably my pick.
Anybody else with any comments on I Saw the TV Glow then?
Yeah, I think I reviewed it for the site, and I think, like Maria was saying, I think I gave it 4 stars, and then I've also regretted it ever since. I think it's so rare that you watch a film and you it feels like it does feel like something completely new, and like it does feel almost like it's something that I've never seen before in film. It feels like something very modern, and it sounds pretentious to say it's rewriting the cinema rule because you're watching it, but it's kind of like there is that sort of uncanny quality to it. But like you say, Ryan, it is very simple, and I think sort of as like an analogy to the trans experience, it feels like such a imaginative and empathetic way to get that message across. And
I think that's it, isn't it? Yeah. It's the empathy. I think if you could, like all these idiots that are spouting basically conspiracy theories about trans people, I just want to sit them down and force them to watch this film, because it doesn't beat you over the head with its themes or anything, but you just feel so keenly for these characters and what they go through, and the ending, without spoiling it, is just so fascinating and sad in an ingenious way. That you like as the film finishes, you just sort of think, wow, it just leaves you picking over it in your head. Justice Smith is terrific. It's a beautiful performance from him, and Bridget Lundy Payne, who I thought was fantastic in the Bill and Ted sequel, which otherwise wasn't great, but she was fantastic in that, and she's equally good, even better in this actually. It's a fantastic film.
Yeah. It's really beautiful. It's lovely.
As a person that finds the Dune movies deadly dull, I too am confused by it making $280 million as a sequel. I never vibed with Dune at all. So I don't know if anybody wants to tell me why these stories are so important. I never got it. I didn't like the Lynch film. I've never read the books.
Well, David Lynch didn't like the Lynch film.
I have to say, on the topic of Dune, I had maybe a unique experience with the first film, the first Denis Villeneuve one, where I was working in a cinema at the time. It was one of the few cinemas that had ushers, and I was on an usher shift overnight on the first night, but I wanted to see the film beforehand without having to, stop halfway through to go and clean a toilet or whatever. So I watched it, thought it was really boring, and then was forced to watch it for work another 4 times in a row on the same day. Which, but every time I watched it, I did feel like I was getting more out of it. And by the end, actually, my favorite watch of Dune Part 1 was the 5th watch in a row that I'd done of it. And then I read the book. I got halfway through the book, thought the book was impossibly boring and very overwritten and nothing happens. So gave up the book. And then I watched the second film, and I loved the second film. And I don't know what my point was, but if you find it boring, try watching it another 4 times, John, and then reading the book.
It's a kind of pop cultural waterboarding.
Oh yeah,
It's
yeah.
like
It absolutely was that. But I think.
It's Stockholm syndrome.
I think genuinely reading the book made me so much more impressed with Denis Villeneuve, because I know people love the book, and I appreciate I am in the minority here, but after I thought the book was so terrible and so boring, seeing what he had to work with and that he made something so cinematic and at the very least sort of visually compelling as Dune Part 1 and then Dune Part 2. I think that made me appreciate Dune Part 2 a lot more. I mean, there's more fighting in Dune Part 2 too, so that.
The last time I had a cinema experience like that involved The Rise of Skywalker and watching it 4 times in one day. But my trajectory was inversely proportionate to yours. It's like I just got angrier and angrier every time I watched that film over the course. I'd gone in hot with like 3 tickets on the opening day with various different friends and just had to like plaster on a fake smile every time the next one turned up and went, so what's it like then? Oh, it's great.
I didn't hate it, but tellingly, I've only seen it once. I've never gone back to Rise of Skywalker since, which is probably.
I've never watched it again.
I've no desire to kind of. The images from it haunt my mind, but.
5 years ago, yesterday, Ryan, we saw The Rise of Skywalker.
Holy Christmas! Yeah, there you go. That's the first and last time then I'd have seen it.
Yeah. So yeah, maybe I need to watch Dune again, not in a warm living room with the fire on. And
did you not see Dune in the cinema then?
No, I didn't see Dune in the cinema. I watched it. It at home.
That's part of the problem. They are designed for the big screen. Dune Part 2 on an IMAX screen was incredible. I was lucky to see the first part because it was that released right in the pandemic, didn't it? I strapped on a mask and saw that in IMAX as well. But yeah, I think.
But is that a bit of a flaw for the film that if it only kind of works on a cinema screen, if that's kind of the intended format, but it's not going to be in the cinema forever and it's never going to look great on my tiny little TV?
No, it still works. It works. It functions as a drama, as a space opera, and all that sort of thing. It's a bit like saying that 2001: A Space Odyssey isn't good cinema because it only works on a big screen. It's just cinema, isn't it? Or Gravity.
Just sit closer to the TV.
Well, the same effect.
But James's advice does not reflect the advice of Film Stories. For anybody who suffers eye damage from sitting looking for the
if there's a film you don't like, don't just keep watching the film you don't like until you start liking it. Therein lies madness.
Getting closer and closer to the screen every time.
Confessions of a Window Cleaner will still look bad after the 5th
I wonder if
viewing.
Simon did that for Horizon, though.
I'm currently on my 30th viewing of Deadpool and Wolverine. I will.
Except it doesn't get better.
That film.
Pouring petrol over yourself as you do so.
Right.
Or acid.
James, then.
Yes.
Are you going to weigh in with your favourites of the year?
I am going to weigh into my favourites. Well, I think all of my favourites of the year have been disqualified in some capacity or other. So, spoiler alert for when Nosferatu comes out in the UK on the 1st of January. I genuinely think it's the best horror film of the last decade by a mile. I've seen a few reviews that are sort of middle on it, and it's one of those films where I don't understand at all how you can't watch it and think it's a perfect film. I absolutely love it. But I won't talk about Nosferatu because it's not out in 2024. The Holdovers came out at the start of the year. It got a special mention on our end of year list because it came out. I think this was pretty much the only territory where it came out after Christmas because it's a Christmas film. But that has, I can say this now because I have watched it already this Christmas, and I'm planning to force my family to watch it over Christmas. I think that's become an instant sort of Christmas classic already. It's absolutely lovely. Talking about empathy, I think it's such a lovely empathetic film, and it's just such like it's the old cliche of they don't make them like this anymore, and not just because it looks like it's made in 1970, but it is just a really wholesome, heartwarming, lovely. It's just lovely. Yeah. That's the only word I could use to describe it. It's just.
Was it actually shot on film? Do you know? I could have looked this up actually.
I think I'm pretty sure it was. Yeah.
It looks as though it's been shot on film, but sometimes you can't tell these days.
Simon and
Part 2
I
did
were
the
lucky
bizarre
enough
thing,
to
didn't
see
it?
an advanced screening of it before Christmas last year, and yes, it's a perfect Christmas. It's a perfect Christmas film. And shout out to Divine Joy Randolph, who is just an absolute joy, and also one of my favourite things to turn up in Only Murders in the Building. Every time she turns up, she absolutely blazes through that and rips everybody to pieces. As soon and to do that in the kind of company that she keeps in that show is amazing. She's the absolute highlight of that, and the absolute highlight of the Holdovers, and just wonderful. But yes, everything about the Holdovers is fantastic. So, what is your legal choice?
My legal choice. Well, my legal choice after that is Sing Sing, which we've discussed. After that, it's probably June Part 2, which we've discussed. After that, then I saw the TV Glow, which you've discussed. But then after that, and not because it's any worse, because I think it is also excellent, and I know you've seen it as well, Ryan, and you really like it. Red Rooms.
Oh, hell yeah.
Which is a sort of a thriller by Pascal Plant, who's a French-Canadian director. Has Simon got a small Christmas toy making a noise in the background?
I think he's
Just
probably
Simon.
getting another delivery of magazines. That's probably his doorbell.
No, he doesn't need any more. This one's keeping him very occupied.
I love the implication that Simon hasn't actually read this issue of Film Stories.
He's just going through.
He's just proofing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, just get his pen out and start marking all the mistakes we made.
Just tearing pages out.
No.
Big X's.
Sorry, James, carry on.
Yes, Red Rubes. It's a brilliant little French-Canadian thriller that I don't think I nowhere near enough people saw it. It's not appeared on any other lists that I've seen. But essentially, it's about Juliette Garipi, I think is how to pronounce her name. She plays a sort of almost Travis Bickle type figure who is obsessed with the trial of a serial killer who has been accused of kidnapping some young girls, torturing them, filming it, putting it on the internet. The worst crimes you can possibly imagine. Like, it's clearly a horrifying, sort of existentially dreadful human being. But she's sort of obsessed with him, and she makes friends with another young woman who is convinced that he's innocent. She sleeps on the street outside the courthouse every night so that she can get in the queue to get into the public viewing every day. And she sort of becomes obsessed with the idea that she can solve the case and figure out once and for all whether he is actually guilty while the official trial is actually still happening. I spoke to the director Pascal Plant for this, for the site, and yeah, I think it's I think there's the rise of true crime and all that sort of stuff is such a modern phenomenon that I think it hasn't really been examined quite enough. And speaking to him, he was he almost seemed quite angry about the way that society has turned out. So you get all these people sort of interrupting official investigations and thinking that they can solve things and coming down to interview victims with cameras and all this horrible stuff. And yeah, I think it's a really interesting, sort of terrifying look at the mindset of someone who wants to do that in a sort of, just a really fascinating, really just straight up thrilling way as well. I think it's even just watching it as a source of entertainment, I was watching it through my fingers for most of the second half, I think. And yeah, I know you really liked it as well, Ryan.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of Saint Maud, in the sense that it's a character study and you're very much trapped in their world, in their sort of view of this case and their obsession. And again, it's interesting. The parallels. It seems like a bit of a thing that's in storytelling at the moment. Because this, Red Room, Smile 2, The Substance, they all have these sort of central characters who are very isolated from everyone else. They've got technology that theoretically means they're constantly connected to everyone. They've got their phones, they've got their computers. But you very rarely see the central character in Red Rooms talk to anyone else other than the other woman who's obsessed with the case. She quickly makes an exit as well when she realises that Kellyanne is even crazier than she is. And that's, so there's an interesting common thing there, because I don't think in The Substance you ever see Demi Moore's character really talk to anyone other than her agent and maybe one or two other people. For long stretches of the film, she's essentially on her own in her apartment or in a bathroom, or, you know what I mean? It's I don't know. It's just something I've noticed in these films. There's sort of like certain common elements that sort of seem to speak to our sort of our current climate of being, you know, connected through social media, but sort of stuck in our heads with our obsessions, our conspiracy theories, our obsession with true crime, whatever it might be.
It's like it feels like a flip side to sort of the fandom of I Saw the TV Glow or something like that, like the parasocial relationship.
It's that taken to its absolute sickest, darkest conclusion. Like the final 10 minutes of Red Rooms is in its own sort of low-key, non-sensational way, the most messed up thing you could possibly imagine. What it means for that character, what you could read into it is incredibly dark. I don't know if it's just me, and I have this subconscious thing for Canadian filmmakers, but I just think this June 2, June Part 2, it's just amazing filmmaking. And like I said earlier, you know, sort of David Cronenberg, who's a Canadian filmmaker, his kind of frosty view of humanity seems to have permeated into the filmmaking, storytelling, whatever. Yeah.
Maria, were you going to weigh in then?
I haven't actually watched it yet. I keep meaning to, but no, I haven't seen it yet, which is, you know, a tragedy, clearly.
Friday night, get some popcorn, have a Red Rooms viewing party.
Get some popcorn. Double bill, Red Rooms, and I Saw the TV Glow, and you'll end the evening on a high. You'll be really pleased.
But see, these are exactly the kind of films that I would do that for. Like, that's just very me. And for some reason, I haven't seen either of them yet. Both firmly on the list, but not yet.
I think knowing your taste to the limited extent that I do, but I feel like even for you, Maria, it would be tough to have too much popcorn fun watching Red Rooms and I Saw the TV Glow. I think they're there's a lot of existential dread that accompanies both of them, I'd say.
See, now you've made it into a challenge.
Yeah.
It'd be on a par with my Manchester by the Sea drinking party I had a few years ago. Didn't go down well. They didn't come back.
Alcohol is definitely needed for that.
You've not seen your friends since.
No smoking either. Do not smoke while watching Manchester by the Sea.
Thank you, Ryan. Right,
no worries.
I'm gonna, in the spirit of moving this along, I'm gonna bring everything down to a popcorn level and talk about the Fall Guy. Solid 23 on our 31 of the year. The 20, but the reason I want to talk about it is it was also the 23rd biggest movie of the year. A film.
That's a quinky dink. I didn't know that.
A film led by two alleged massive box office stars.
Oh, stars, yeah. Sorry, I don't know what you're going to say. They are big stars, you're right.
Directed by David Leitch, former stuntman, a remake of a existing IP to some extent from the 70s stroke early 80s, and couldn't in any realistic way move the needle in the current box office environment seems a shame, because it is a very well put together film. There's good chemistry between the two lead actors. It's well put together. Aaron Taylor-Johnson puts in a good performance as the douchebag Hollywood star. It's funny. It made me laugh, and I just found it sad that it's all the way down there in the box office takings. Is unlikely to see any similar sort of film like that. A big popcorn crowd, what would have been considered a crowd pleaser 20 years ago, greenlit for a while. I think it probably just about broke even, didn't it? But highly entertaining to me as a 50-year-old guy, but apparently not vibing with the current cinema audiences for whatever reason. So yeah, I thought for what it was and the way it was done, it was a real shame that it didn't click with audiences, considering, like, I don't know, it made half of the money of Bad Boys. Was it Bad Boys 4? Or were we at 4 or 5 with Bad Boys now?
It's 4, isn't it, I think?
4.
Or is it 5? No, it's 5, isn't it? 'Cause
Yeah, Bad Boys 5.
Yeah. It's worrying that I can't remember.
I thought it was a real shame,
run.
because it was a better film than that. And that's why I wanted to talk about The Fall Guy. Don't know if anybody else wants to chime in on the subject.
I think maybe the struggle that The Fall Guy had was I think it may, for me personally, it might have got sort of overhyped slightly. I think, I mean, I'm definitely as guilty of this as anyone, but I think there's so much, when you see films like that in advance and you think, oh, this could be, it's not quite original, but essentially an original film, an original big blockbuster that's using practical stunts and could be the biggest thing in the world. And you really, really want it to be the biggest thing in the world. And then I think when I saw it, eventually, I agree. I had a really fun time. I really enjoyed it, but it was sort of I think it was a bit messy in places, and I ended up thinking, oh, that's a sort of solid 7 or 8 out of 10. And I think I maybe built it up in my head as being sort of more than that, potentially. And instead, I think, because there was so much hype behind it in the build-up to its release, then when it came out, the word of mouth couldn't quite hold up to the reputation it had already got online, I think. And I think that maybe made it fizzle out slightly. I think it's interesting to compare it to David Leitch's previous film, Bullet Train, which came out last year, the year before, maybe. Because I think in the end they ended up making about the same amount of money, and Bullet Train seemed to sort of just come and go, really, sort of in terms of a cultural footprint. But I think that was a really fun film, and that was a sort of I think it was based on a book, but that was a non-IP, really fairly original star-led film with Brad Pitt. And I think maybe it's just that is the level that sort of film works at now. Like, they're not going to be the highest grossing film on the planet, but they can make, I don't know how much money it made in the end, like 100 million, $80 million fairly easily. So yeah, I'm slightly more optimistic about the future than maybe the film's box office would maybe suggest. But I think it was just a solid mid-budget blockbuster that maybe got hyped up as a.
That's the problem, though, isn't it? It wasn't mid-budget; it was quite expensive.
It's 120 million, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, it's not insane money. It's not, like some Marvel films are sort of into the 200, almost $300 million mark, but it's not, like the John Wick films, sort of, those are properly, sub 100 million. I think that they probably snuck up, didn't they, as they
Yeah.
got to number 4, but the sort of sub 100 million. I think that's kind of what they needed. I think they made the same mistake with Bullet Train as well. I think they threw an awful lot of money on that and sort of overglossed it a bit when they probably should have made it more like John Wick 1, John Wick 2 kind of money, and then it would have looked better on the balance sheet. Because like you said, James, I mean, like The Fall Guy, okay, yeah, it's based on a TV show, but it's such a dim, distant TV show that it might as well be an original property. I don't think anyone's going to, oh, wow, yeah, I used to love Lee Majors. Let's go and see the Fall Guy movie. You know, I don't think that.
Well, yeah, I'm old enough to be.
Old people don't go to the cinema. Like, cinema is aimed at people that are in their, teens and 20s. That's the classic thing. Like, people in their teens and 20s don't know who the hell the Fall Guy is or what the Fall Guy is. I don't know. Yeah, it seemed odd to me. They gave it a big marketing push as well. I think as well, like, there's been a lot of those sorts of jokey action films, like Argyle came out this year. That had insane money spent on it as well, didn't it? And a massive marketing push behind Argyle. And it was basically pants.
Yeah, the Fall Guy is in a different class to Argyle in terms of every aspect of it.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that I do wonder if sometimes people just sort of look at these things and just think, oh right, okay, big jokey action comedy, got it, seen those, I think that the thing is that the cinemas become so expensive, you have to really, really force people to go out and see something. And there's so many things that people are like, oh yeah, I'll just wait for that on streaming. I bet The Fall Guy does really well on streaming and disc and stuff like that. That's where it'll live on.
So, I mean, I was going to ask. There seems to be a resurgence of mid to low budget rom-coms, sort of, thanks to streaming and stuff. So you think maybe action movies of this type have got to start cutting their cloth to fit and come in with more cheaper and with more realistic expectations, like the John Wicks of this world and things like that. That's possibly the key to success for this kind of thing. Yeah,
I think so. A lot of thrillers are going straight to streaming now. Stuff like Roadhouse, much to Doug Liman's chagrin, didn't get a theatrical showing apart from one. I think it's just getting much harder to. Like the films that would once have been sort of the bread and butter of studios, mid-budget thrillers, mysteries, and all those sorts of things, are now increasingly the preserve of streaming. And once Only Murders in the Building, once upon a time, that would have been a movie. Probably with several sequels, but it would have been a movie. It wouldn't have been a TV show with fucking Steve Martin and with that level of quality cast.
Yes.
Even 10 years ago, that would have been. Maybe a bit more than that, but you know what I mean? Like a generation ago or so, that would have seemed crazy. That you would have.
Yes, it would have been a knockabout comedy action thriller with Steve Martin and Martin Short.
Like you flip
or
it around.
Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor, or
the Three Amigos would be a TV show now. Do something like that. You just flipped it around, Or Man with Two Brains.
I think the streaming point is really good with films like Bullet Train and The Fall Guy. They feel like films that you can wait for. They don't feel like, they don't have that sort of must-see feeling that I think, for example, Dune Part 2 had, or The Substance, which very quickly got this reputation of like, you have to see it to believe it, which is then driving people to watch it in a cinema rather than, we knew it was going to go to movie, but people wanted to see it first. And I think The Fall Guy kind of lacked that, you have to see it now rather than waiting for. Because, we subscribe, I think I've got about 5 or 6 streaming services. And obviously there's a cost of living crisis, so no one's doing great financially. So if I don't have to spend 15 quid on a cinema ticket at a screening where there's loads of people checking their phones, filming the screen to put on TikTok, why wouldn't I just pick a film on Netflix instead? And
Netflix is a really good point. Is the problem for Fall Guys is that it looked worryingly. Again, I'm not saying Fall Guys is a bad movie or anything, that people casually looking at the trailer might think, oh, well, that's just kind of like one of those Netflix action films that has Ryan Reynolds in it or whatever, like, or even Ryan Gosling, like, The Grey Man. Oh God, what's that horrendous one with Gal Gadot and
Red
Rock
Notice.
Red Notice. Yeah, why have you all got red in the title? Red One, Red Notice.
That just in defence, that's the other Ryan.
Well, yeah, but so I was thinking, I
My
just mentioned
wife
the Grey
cannot
Man.
distinguish between the two of them. It's hilarious. She cannot pass Gosling and Reynolds. They're the same person to her. She cannot pass it. So I feel committed to pointing this out at every given opportunity.
Yeah, I was talking about the Grey Man as well, another colour-based action thriller. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, streaming.
Blah, 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 streaming. So, in a little side note, I was interested in your list. You featured the Stuntman, or Stuntman.
Stuntman, yeah.
So, do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because it seems a nice place to go after the Fall Guy.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't know. It's probably pure coincidence because of the way filmmaking works. But Stuntman is a Hong Kong. It's a drama, really. It's set in the action filmmaking industry, like The Fall Guy is, and it's about stunt choreographers. But it's very much not The Fall Guy. It's not a comedy. It's not full of high wire action. There are one or two action scenes in it, but it's kind of a love letter, I suppose, to Hong Kong's sort of 70s, 80s, early 90s heyday of John Woo and filmmakers of that ilk. And the fascinating thing about it is that not only is it about a stunt choreographer who was working in the 90s Hong Kong film industry, and then his career got derailed because a stuntman injured himself. And then he comes back years later in the modern day to direct, the proverbial one last job. He gets roped into making another action movie, and he sees how much the action film industry has changed. Whereas once in the 70s and 80s, they would have taken days just doing one scene and choreographing it and shooting it and getting it absolutely precise. They've just got a few hours. They've just got to rattle through it, and he just can't get his head around it. And also reckoning with his own sort of obsessive desire for perfection and how that's pushed him away from his family. But yeah, the fascinating thing about it is that it's directed by two guys that were stunt choreographers, a bit like David Leitch, actually.
David Leitch, yeah.
But also the guy who's the central character in it is played by Stephen Tung. And he is such a veteran of Hong Kong cinema that he's the kid in Enter the Dragon that Bruce Lee teaches right at the start of the film. It's like, never look at the finger or you'll miss all the heavenly glory. Like, he's that kid. And he, since then, he went off and became a successful stunt choreographer. He worked on loads of John Woo movies. He did Hard Boiled, John Woo's last Hong Kong movie before he went to Hollywood. Yeah. So he's seen all this stuff. He's lived through it. And so even though the film isn't perfect, it's the drama in it is a little bit soapy. There's a scene at the beginning where they try to recreate essentially a scene from Police Story. It's very much a homage to the mall fight at the end of Police Story, the Jackie Chan film from 1985, 1986. Anyway, but they don't really have the budget to recreate it as well, and that kind of shows. It's kind of ironic in a way, but as a whole, it's brilliant and wonderful. It's a wonderful film, just as as a homage to its own industry. So that sort of, if you're a fan of Hong Kong martial arts films or heroic bloodshed films, it's fascinating to watch.
It's interesting how that's very much a parallel to Leitch and being Brad Pitt's stuntman and making his career there before moving into directing. They've come up in parallel and they've appeared from a very different angle at the same time.
But this would be like if someone like David Leitch was actually the main character in the movie as well.
Yeah,
that's the fascinating thing. You don't have Ryan Gosling pretending to be a stuntman. You see what I mean? You actually have a stuntman as the central character, which is it's interesting for me anyway.
I suppose the time has come to ask Simon if he's interested in putting his magazine down and giving his choice for film of the year.
I apologise. That's a hugely fascinating magazine. Have you seen that?
What is it?
I may have glanced at it, Simon.
Some copies here. I mean, who knew that someone still put out 168-page film magazines? Have you heard the thump? Have you heard
Is it on nice
Who-
paper, Simon?
Listen to
Who would
that.
be insane enough to try something as
Oh, hello. What were you lot talking about?
stupid as that?
Talking about
I think
Kevin
the
Costner.
holdovers was shot on digital. They made it look like film.
Yes.
I was going to say that's what they did with
something
June,
about that.
June, wasn't it? June Part 2. They actually
Yeah.
shot it digitally, then
Yeah.
recorded it onto 50mm film, I think it was,
Yeah.
and then had to put it back onto digital to show it in digital
It's
projection rooms.
the great irony that you need a lot of technology to make a film look like it's made in the 1970s.
But in Photoshop, there's just that add grain function. They could just do
I've
that.
got ZX Spectrum
It's
up
easy, I
there.
can-
That would probably handle it.
They could
Steve-
make
Steve
everyone have
Edlin
like
doesn't-
dog faces
yeah,
as well
Steve
while they're
Edlin
doing it.
doesn't bother with like passing it to film. He'll just grain it. He has his own algorithms for doing that kind of thing on his movies, and they look some of the most beautiful things you've ever seen. So there we go. Simon, beavers.
What? I beg your pardon?
Tell us about beavers,
You've got a
Simon.
terrible cough. Well, there's a tradition in this episode of films you gave 4 stars to that you just look back and you just think, oh, so mean. And the first
I'm
review
so
I wrote
correct
this year
when
was
we
The
get 4
Beekeeper.
stars.
The Beekeeper, which I'm surprised to see has been missed out of a lot of the awards contention. But still, here we are. Now, I want to. The film I'm talking about was made like a couple of years ago, but because it was so cheap, and because it's like it was taken around, it couldn't even get distribution for a long time, to the point where the filmmakers just did the old roadshow thing. They put the film cans in the car and took the DCP round America. They booked 10 cinemas themselves just to try and get it noticed. And it's this, it's Hundreds of Beavers, which is this just most surreal silent comedy, which I missed it on its cinema run, and I found it in a DVD shop. Imagine such things. You need computers to recreate DVD shops now, I think. And it's a 12 certificate film, which negates a lot of what half of you are thinking straight away. And it's just glorious. A silent comedy about hundreds of beavers. And I don't really want to tell you an awful lot about it, because I just sat there. I mean, you made a point with, I think it was a Sing Sing, about, sorry, I saw the TV Glow, about, I've not seen anything quite like this before. And I've not seen anything quite like Hundreds of Beavers before. And there's no way of saying it out loud that doesn't sound wrong, but it's just a delight. And just to give you some kind of pushback on it, I sat and watched it with my daughter, who said it's one of the worst things she's ever seen, and she absolutely hated it. And I'm sat there. There are very few films I've watched in my life where I'm short of breath because I'm laughing that hard at them. You know, those moments, it happens so rarely, especially as you get older, when you've seen everything funny you think you're ever going to see. And I was wheezing. It's wonderful. If you're looking for something more mainstream, I want to put in. You talked about thrillers and this whole, where are we getting the mid-budget thrillers from? The best detective story of the year is Conclave, which uses just, from the outside, just looks like one of those really posh dramas. You know, one of those very
it's
worthy
beautifully
Oscar.
shot. That's one thing I wanted
It's
to bring
gorgeous.
up with this. It's just stunningly
It's
made.
gorgeous,
design.
but at the heart of it is such an intricate, almost detective drama. And I thought it was wonderful. I really love it, I've decided, when Ray Fiennes actually does a genre film. Because as much as we associate him with learning foreign languages and directing Shakespeare, starring, I mean, when he turned up in The Menu, he was having more fun with that than I'd seen it. I mean, you go back to like the early days of him doing quiz show and stuff like that, when he's willing just to like try something a bit more. I thought Conclave was great. I want to watch Conclave. And here's to mid-budget like dramas that you just think are going to get extinct. Then Clint Eastwood comes along and makes one, and the studio doesn't want to put it out. And that Conclave exists, I think, is a minor miracle. So I'm having Beavers, Conclave, and Beekeeper.
Fair enough. Okay, right. Everybody's had their.
Can I get my magazine back now? This is really good. store.filmstories.co.uk.
Have you found any more typos?
Yeah, I did.
Oh.
I actually did. Yeah. There was a moment in the mix where I was just like, I just winced.
No.
What do you mean more? Hang on.
Oh. It would just be a bad time to mention that we spelt the title wrong on the front cover.
I think you joke. I've done that before. That's a story for another time. That's the after hours version of this.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Film stories
Sorry
after
for bringing
dark.
it up.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
so we'll wind up. We're now 55 minutes in, so we'll wind up by saying that issue that Simon was enjoying of Film Stories.
I love it.
Give us another look.
Look at them. Look
Yeah.
at them.
That issue that nearly killed us all will be arriving in people's letterboxes imminently, and you can order it from store.filmstories.co.uk if you are not due to get an issue. If you've not already ordered it, you can subscribe digitally and get the downloadable version from the website too. You can find Simon's podcasts there at filmstories.co.uk. You can find all our regular news stories there. You can also find our new merchandise, of which this is an example. This is our
Look at it.
lovely Nicolas Cage as Superman mug with "We live in the worst timeline" on the other side, because
That is true.
because
That's the truest thing ever written on a mug.
everything just becomes truer as January approaches.
Next year's will just say, "Oh God,"
And then the year after, it's just dot.
it's just a mushroom cloud.
So,
That's lovely.
Like
yeah,
that
we've also
cat's
got
teeth.
T-shirts and coasters and posters and other things that start with "oast." So yeah, you can
There's
get
another
get all of
typo.
that from filmstories.co.uk and store.filmstories.co.uk. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter and Blue Sky and Facebook and all those things. I'm not going to go into detail. That's all down there in the YouTube links. I'm sure you can find it all down there.
Can't see it.
Does anybody want to? Does anybody want to conclude with any final thoughts on 2024 and what they might be looking for for 2025?
Beavers.
Simon, I know what you're going to say. Go on.
Beavers. Honestly, go and check
Side
them
of
out.
Kevin Costner.
I think it bears pointing out that 2024 was the year that Simon achieved his genuine goal, which I think has been 15 years or more in the making, of interviewing Kevin Costner, and you can see that on the website too.
He's now locked in this cupboard. Here,
He's now
actually.
locked in
Stay
the
there,
cupboard.
Kevin. Good boy.
Simon and Kevin, Simon Brew, Chief Costner
Posh.
botherer, is now firm friends with Kevin, and we'll be looking forward to Horizon Part 2 appearing in 2025. Would you care to give us an odds on that happening, Simon? What do you think?
I understand it's looking like April,
It's looking like April.
but don't hold me to it because I don't know for definite.
Does anybody else want to chime in with a film that they are looking forward to in 25? Ryan?
I don't know what's coming out next year. What are films?
Horizon Part 2 there. right?
Fuse. There's a film called Fuse.
David Mackenzie.
Purely because it's directed by David Mackenzie, who did Hell or High Water, which is a film that I'll go to my grave banging on about and annoying people about because I like it so much. Yes, it's a thriller from him. So another thriller from the director of one of my favourite films of the 2010s is worth looking forward to.
Maria or James, do you have a 2025 thing that you're looking forward to at the moment?
It's got to be 28 years later. Zombies, Danny Boyle, Alex Garland. What more could I want from a year?
You get 2 Alex Garland next year. You get Warfare as well.
Mhm.
No zombies.
You don't know that. There might. There might be.
You never know.
Yeah.
Jane,
Great.
what's currently top of your list for 2025?
I think it's probably Mickey 17, the new Bong Joon-ho film that has been moved. It's had its release date moved about 400 times and
Yes.
messed around a lot. And it's, I said it feels like it's been yonked since Parasite, and it has. It's been what? It'd be
5 years.
almost 6 years
Yeah.
by the time
Yeah, it'll be
it actually
fun.
comes out.
Crikey.
Which is nuts. But that's coming out in April, is it now?
Didn't
It's
they move
sometime-
it
Who
again?
knows,
They
Jane?
moved
Who
it again.
knows?
It
Who
was supposed
knows?
to be in the spring. I think they've shifted it again.
Well, it was supposed to be in January, and then everyone sort of thought, oh, that's a weird time for them to release it. And then they moved it to the spring. And then maybe they've moved it again.
You're
Who
right,
knows?
yeah, April. April.
Whenever it comes out, I'll be seeing that. I'm very excited.
5 times
17 times.
on the same day.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, fair
Yeah.
point.
Um,
Lovely.
I'm going to point out that we're getting a new Mission Impossible next year. I'm a very basic man, very basic tastes, and that is it, basically. I like watching Tom Cruise throw himself off tall buildings. So, yeah, that. I'm intrigued to see what the Minecraft movie actually looks like because, my God.
Yeah, oh boy.
And on that note,
yeah, that's it. Well, my daughter pointed out there's like, what the heck did they think a Minecraft movie was going to look like?
I mean, I'll be honest.
Not like that. Is
Yeah,
it?
so-
Yeah,
yeah.
I expected
Close,
it to
yeah.
look like anything that wouldn't give me a headache watching the trailer. That's quite a low bar.
What have you done
Anyway.
to Jason Momoa? That was my question. Oh dear.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to Mission Impossible and unashamedly the new Superman movie as well, having seen the trailer for that yesterday. That's my jam, definitely. But yeah, so with that, Merry Christmas, everybody. Happy New Year to everybody out there. And we'll see you with issue 54 of Film Stories.
Don't make any
Sometime
promises,
maybe in
Cookie.
March. I don't know.
June.
Before that. We'll manage to get ourselves back together before that. But yeah.
Don't promise anything you can't actually.
Simon's crying.
Simon.
Which isn't the ending I was expecting. Somehow
Right.
it seems.
Merry Christmas, everybody. We'll see you all later.
Merry Christmas.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Happy Winterval.
Thanks, everybody.
let it-
It's just gone.
He's just got, doesn't he have to let it upload?
They are
Otherwise,
losers.
Files.